What's up, Dual Coast fans? We are live Tuesday morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for Russ, as usual. Very inspiring and amazing guest with us today, Dan Guerra. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
It's a pleasure to be here, Dan and Russ. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We always love bringing on guests that have the same name, so it doesn't trip us up. You know,
That's exactly right.
Our next guest is Russ. Oh man,
Russ,
what is going on this morning, Dan? You feeling good?
I'm feeling good. I am. I had a good night rest. I'm looking forward to talking to you two here in New York City. I'm going to start my day soon. Well, already started, I guess.
Yeah, it started, man. You know, so we were talking about New York City off air, and we were talking about, you know, the floods that was happening, and both these guys travel into the city, and man, crazy stuff there, you know. So, you know, the affliction happened. We also talked off air about Dan's toe having surgery. We talked about that. So we might dive deeper into Dan's toe later, but you know, right now we're just going to stick with the clinical psychologist that he is for over 25 years. This guy, Dan Guerra, I got to say this. I'm going to set the show up by this. I was having coffee at my favorite coffee shop in Capitola called Verve. And sitting right next to me, there's only 4 tables. Sitting right next to me, this cute little curly-headed girl. I think she was a little over 1 year old. Dan can tell me her name because I can't recall it.
Lily.
But what is it?
Lily.
Lily. Yes, Lily. So she just kept staring at me. And I'm sure it had to do with the hair. But she just kept looking at me. So finally, I gave her some attention. I started, you know, doing the little baby thing, you know, and everything. So ended up talking with the parents. Guess what his name is? Dan. So, so we started talking, right? And so he puts me in connection with Dan Guerra. They were visiting out from the East Coast. They were sitting right next to me in the coffee shop. We started talking. They're moving out here to the West Coast. So they tell me, you got to meet Dan Guerra because this guy travels all over. He's hiked in over 50 countries. He's been all around the world. He's an outdoor nature guy, which is exactly what Move Today 365 is all about, getting outside and enjoying nature. And this guy is living it.
You met my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. It's incredible. So
just to clarify, that's my niece, Lily.
So yeah, we're just sitting at this coffee shop, and it's just crazy. And so then Dan Guerra and I, you know, we start talking, and it's just, you know, we've struck up a chord on, you know, talking about the nature and getting outside, and this guy is a cool dude. He has also written a book. It's called From Stress to Centered, a practical guide to a healthier and happier you. He's also got and this is on Amazon, and also a book entitled, that's on the way, The Journey Within. And I'll tell you, he's also a podcaster. So, you know, this guy, I'll tell you, he does it all. And he doesn't let the affliction of the toe surgery affect any of this. Any of this. And Dan Guerra, we're so happy to have you on here. It's a pleasure. You know, you talk about an alignment. You're talking about, you know, you're walking through life, because a lot of people, like, you know, you get on airplanes, maybe you got, you know, you're busy or whatever. It's an opportunity to, you know, to meet people, to talk to people. That day, Lily in the coffee shop, you know, she got me connected and started, you know, talking with the family. And so here we are months later, and you're on our show. So welcome to Dual Coast, buddy.
Thank you. That's that's a great story, and a good example of how these little moments can create big happenings, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let me ask you, man, let's dive into your book. Okay. Let's dive in, and maybe later we'll touch on the new book that's coming out. But let's dive into your book and tell us some practical tips that just come off of your out of your brain of what can impact us today about this lifestyle that you're living. Okay. Tell us.
Well, first, I just got to give credit to my co-author, Dana Gianta, who wrote that book with me. She did an incredible job on the self-care and the boundary piece of that book. But I think the first, you know, to answer your question, Russ, the thing that pops up is just three areas that I always look to in the human experience that make the most sense for me. And they're right literally under our nose. It's the body, the breath, and the mind. These are the things we're carrying around with us in everyday experience. And unfortunately, a lot of times our attention wanders off of one or more of those three things. And if you need a place to start, if your listeners need a place to start, it's great just to consider one of those three things, if not all. And I personally like to start with the breath because it's literally under our nose. And, it's the first thing that happens when we're born, right? We take an inhale, and it's the last thing we do when we leave this earth. We exhale. But most of us aren't thinking about the breath in the in-between moments until we're losing our breath, or, our breath is hard to get in, or it's rapid, right? Then we start to notice it. So for me, in terms of the human experience, if you can learn to become aware of your breath and slow it down, in some cases, speed it up if you want to heat the body. There's practices for that called pranayama, which come from the yoga world. And of course, the body, what's happening in our body. I think we've become so cerebral in our training and our conditioning that sometimes we're almost like just ahead, we're just way up here. You bring your attention down below the neck. Oftentimes when I'm working with clients, I'll say, I want to ask that question again, but this time I want you to answer not from here, but from below the neck. Can you locate where your feelings are, where your emotions are down here? Muscle tension, how we're standing. In New York City, there's a lot of stop and go movement, as you can imagine, right? Dan knows. And you're standing at a light, and you see everybody. They're like they're creeping, they're waiting to go, or to, they're looking for the bike to come. And so what's happening? Can you breathe? Can you just be still in the body in these crazy, chaotic moments? It's counterintuitive, right? It's not syntonic, it's dystonic, but we can bring our awareness. I'm just throwing out a couple of things for the three.
I love it.
Groups. And then the mind, okay, that, the housing of thoughts, right? And the thoughts we have, I don't know how many thoughts per day, they're just zipping through our minds at like lightning speed. And for the listeners, if you can learn how to get in there and just separate the thoughts out from the person, to understand that your thoughts are not who you are. They're just discrete events that are happening in the mind. But unfortunately, we get attached to some of these thoughts, like a I don't know, like a bad soap opera or something, where we're like, we can't stop watching it or getting into it, even though we know what the ending is going to be. It's like not interesting, right? But we make it interesting, which creates tension, creates problems. So anyway, just back to that idea of, if you can separate out you from your thinking, there are thoughts and there's the thinker, right? They're not the same thing. That can be very, very rewarding, because then you start to go, oh yeah, there's that same old thought that something bad's going to happen. Oh yeah, there's that one that like I'm late for work and I got to tense my muscles and I got to, be anxious. Oh, there's that one that, this or that's going to happen. And I think, who was it? Mark Twain said that, I've had a million worried thoughts and only 1% of them ever happened, something like that. Yeah. So breath, body, mind.
I love that. Before Dan asks the question, I got to plug this, because Ryan Patrick is a guest that's going to be on our show at the end of the month on the 29th, I think it is. Ryan Patrick, I met him through a buddy up in Portland, Oregon. He suffered from sleep apnea for 7 years. Okay. He traveled the world looking to find how he was sleeping like 3 hours a night. And you know what he discovered? Breath work. Breath work helped him to overcome his sleep apnea.
Yeah, your breath is connected to your nervous system. And when you address your breathing, it's not just the breathing, it's so connected to all of your organ systems and how the mind works. And sleep is really connected to the reticular formation in the brain, which responds to different breathing patterns. So yeah, we are really all connected,
Yeah.
Not only as one person, but as people in the whole world, I think. So there's a lot of parallels there. That's great. And
Beautiful.
so that's Ryan Patrick. That's cool. You had another Patrick on here. That's his first name, not too long ago. And I don't know if you know, Patrick and I are very good friends.
Yeah.
It's the barefoot hiker. We go hiking all the time up in the Hudson Valley.
Oh yeah, Dan Skoka's going to join you guys soon. He likes those overnighters.
Yeah,
he's more into glamping than camping.
Big time. I'll do it at the Marriott. You guys let me know how it is.
That's right. Well, maybe you'll hang out in the Purple Pixie someday. Purple Pixie, my little.
He also loves running.
Camper. It's almost camping.
That's it. Love the running. Love the yoga on the beach.
Cool.
Oh, that's funny.
That's awesome. Dan, I just want to touch back on the book real quick. You're a very multifaceted guy. You do a ton of things from speaking, psychology. Was there any personal experiences that you actually went through that motivated the idea for this book? And is there like a specific chapter maybe that resonates with you specifically in that book that comes from personal experience that you went through?
That's a great question. Yeah. Oh, so many. I'll start with just, I was an anxious young guy. I'm not going to go deep into, because we'd need 4 hours for the podcast about all the traumas and all the childhood conflict. But, we therapists and people that go into this field, we tend not to run headlong into it because, it's such a fun, great, like we just, we're going to have a ball. We usually come out of some personal challenges and struggles. So yeah, the early life was definitely challenging, very challenging. So I was living with a lot of anxiety. But when you're 4 and 7 and 10 and even 12, you don't know from anxiety. You don't know what this is. You just think this is your normal way of being. I was sort of a kid who was interested in things, which was good. I had a lot of curiosity and I had a lot of energy. So picture curiosity, energy, pretty smart in school, but tons of anxiety, body tension. I mean, I was an athlete. I was a wrestler, so I got used to pushing myself quickly. But it wasn't until about 20 or 21 where I realized that, yeah, I was achieving goals. I was batting them down. I was going, but I felt like I was on a continual treadmill. Right. And then if the treadmill was increasing in speed from day to day, and if the treadmill stopped, if I got off, everything was going to fall apart. That's what it felt like. Wasn't true, I come to find later, but that was my internal experience. That was no way to live either. I mean, I was active and I was moving, but there was something that didn't feel good about that. So I discovered, thank God, that I have an ability to be aware. I have an ability to monitor my breath. And then I found this, what is this wacky practice called yoga? I mean, it was 1990 when I discovered yoga. It was before it was hot and hip, and Lululemon, and there weren't even certifications. And you sort of, my first yoga class was at this wonderful, beautiful Indian woman's little one-room studio where she came in with her sari, and we would sit at her feet and she'd talk about the mind. That was yoga class. Then maybe we would do one pose at the end of class. Wow. But anyway, that one pose taught me, wow, there's tension and there's relaxation. There's movement and there's rest. As odd as that sounds, internally as a go-getting, I have to keep all the balls in the air kind of mindset, that was revolutionary to me. And I'm watching all these people in class, they were 50 and 60, bending and stretching and doing, and I can't even touch my toes, I could probably lift them all over my head. I was really strong, but I could not do what they were doing. And all the ego in me and all the, athlete in me was like, what the hell is going on? I got to be able to do this. So it really set me on a path of like both and, right? I didn't have to give up the athleticism, but I learned that there was a new way of understanding my body and my mind, and it had to do with letting go. Interestingly enough.
Yeah.
And resting and learning the difference between tension and relaxation. There's a practice out there that I teach. I love sharing it. It's free. It's available on Insight Timer, which is one of these free apps for the mind. It's called progressive muscle relaxation. And for folks just starting out that don't want to do yoga, they don't want to go that far, could just learn the difference between tension and relaxation. That's huge. And progressive muscle relaxation is the most studied relaxation practice in the world and has incredible research behind it. It's basically learning how to go through the body and tense different parts and exhale on the breath, but to do it differentially, right? Not just all at once, but the eyebrows and the nose and the eyes and the ears, and go through the whole body. PMR, progressive muscle relaxation. So did I go too far off your question? early years, a lot of anxiety. And I learned how to, work with my tension, work with my anxiety, be able to distinguish between what needed attention and what did not, didn't need attention. Combined with a lot of psychotherapy and having to go into my own inner demons and, things that happened in my life and all that stuff. All that stuff it informed me, though, as a practitioner. It really helped. When you look at yourself and you work on that, you can really begin the process of starting to maybe facilitate others' journeys.
That's beautiful.
That's great.
That's awesome. That's awesome. A couple of days ago, I was I connect with a lot of people because I live in a small community right here on the beach, and so I see a lot of families that come every year on their vacation, repeat vacationers. And we got into this conversation with somebody that I've seen the last number of years, and we were talking about hiking just a couple of days ago, and we talked about Half Dome up in Yosemite. Have you ever hiked Half Dome?
Been there.
Okay.
Well, I didn't get to. Wait a minute. I hiked El Capitan behind it, not Rock Face, but I didn't do Half Dome.
Okay. Beautiful. So Half Dome, if you start from the base camp and go all the way up, it's a round trip of one day of 17 miles. Wow. So a bunch of us in my mid-30s, about when I say bunch, 7 of us, we went up, we stayed at my pastor's house, and then we got up early the next morning. We did the whole hike, and it was a lot, right? And but it was a great experience. Well, these guys had also, and I asked them about when you got to the backside of Half Dome. I said, were you ever afraid? Because there's cables on both sides. About every 10 feet, there's a board that goes up so that you've got some grip. Were you ever afraid? A lot of us, we go on these hikes, we go on adventures, we go through life, right? And we look at this, where we're trying to get, and we prepare ourselves. And, you talk about, climbing, the Everest, right? All the preparation is going to the mountaintop. But most deaths occur on the way down. You've reached that peak. You've got to the prize, So what is it in your life and all of these travels, right, of preparing ourselves once we reach that goal? What is it, man, that we can stay focused even on the return, right? Because the return can be detrimental in our daily life. It could be detrimental to our life in general. But what is it that we can really focus on our next on our next step, on our next breath, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I got you. I think
okay.
I know where you're headed. You're asking me the question, right?
Yes.
I think what comes to mind is presence. Right. And it's almost like that idea that most car accidents happen when you're 5 minutes from home, is something like that. It's not like when you're out, but it's like when you sort of relax so much that you lose awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Your mind starts to wander. And so that's what it brings to mind for me, is that we can be so focused on the goal. I mean, there's so many ways we could take this, right? You get so focused on and pinpointed on your one goal that you're missing the periphery, which might also be important. It might be our health. It might be an injury. It might be even family members that you've neglected because you got to get this next deal or this next mountaintop or whatever it is. So I'm not at all trying to give the impression that I do this perfectly or that I do this well, but I do try every day to bring myself to the present, the present moment, whether that's standing on a New York City street, or whether that's I'm with a client, a patient, being here with you guys, like every once in a while, just doing a check that, where am I? Is my mind like jumping ahead in the future? Am I solving problems in my head when I'm really should be listening to somebody? And that's kind of like reeling in the fishing line. That's the image that comes to mind. You're not yanking it back. We're just sort of like, come on, buddy, let's come back right over here. Where am I? And I'm thinking of a personal story where I was blessed to have the opportunity to be in the Himalayas, not Everest, but I did the Annapurna circuit. This was back in like 1998, quite a while ago. But when you reach the last village before the Thorong La Pass, which is about 17,700 feet, everybody starts to get a little altitude sickness. It's like kind of high up there, right? And so you're sleeping in the last tea village, and you're sort of like the breathing's heavy and people are starting to report headaches and everything. And there's a physiological concern for losing awareness. And I remember there was a group of Canadian guys, and one guy was really sick. And by all means, he should have, at that point, just headed down the mountain, because the cure to altitude sickness is to descend, of course. And he wouldn't have it. He wanted to reach the top, and we were so close. And his buddies were like lifting him over their head and taking turns, like carrying him up the mountain the next day. And it's a snow-covered pass and all that stuff. So why am I saying that? Yeah, one misstep, one, like, if that guy tried to make that on his own, or even his buddies who now like have this other load, one misstep and like, your life's over. So
yeah,
presence. And awareness and, groundedness, all those practices. And there's a lot of great grounding practices out there. I'm sure Patrick Hogan talked about some of them.
Yeah. The going barefoot. We talked about a little bit.
Soaking in the rivers.
Soaking in the rivers.
See that guy move with no shoes on. It's unbelievable. I learned a lot from him.
Oh, that's amazing.
I'm just out of sheer curiosity, you just brought up the Himalayas, but like out of all the places you guys have explored, let's say just you and Patrick or you on your own, which adventure maybe stands out the most to you or the most transformative? Would it be that Himalayas trip, or was it something else?
That one's hard to beat, man. Yeah, that really, I mean, that always stands out. I've been to so many mountains and so many places that I don't even remember all the names. They're embedded somewhere in my journals, but I would say I'll give you another one after Himalayas. Yeah, Himalayas was a 21-day journey,
Woo.
So it's not just the climbing, but it's the cultural experience. I mean, Nepal is an amazing country. I ran into a man on the first day of the journey who was Nepalese, and he had about 10 donkeys behind him, packed with stuff. He spoke about 4 words of English. I spoke about 4 words of Nepalese, and we just hit it off energetically. And
you went around and around and around in conversation if you only knew 4 words.
Well, yeah. Well, interestingly, not so. It's you can communicate on lots of different levels, as I've learned.
Sure.
As I've traveled around the world, I realize I only usually pick up 10 or 15 phrases or something, but it's enough to just if people are present and settled, you'd be surprised how much you can get done and what you can learn about a person. I learned that he was the sole principal and teacher of his village. He had just walked about 110 miles to go get school supplies. And he had 10 donkeys with him with all the school supplies from the town of Pokhara, which is like the launching point for a lot of the Himalayan treks. And I sussed out, we wound up staying overnight at the same place, and we had breakfast together, and he was like communicating to me that he would love for me to come to his village, and would I honor him to come to his village? I was like, would I honor you? Are you kidding me? Like, and his village was like, so the Annapurna circuit, goes for about 20 days, up one side, down the other. And there's all these villages that kind of host the trekkers. They know you're coming, and, it's pretty set up, even though it's still pretty rustic and cool. His village was like 2.5 hours up into the ice-capped peaks, like off the main trail, So as an example, that was like one of the experiences I had just spontaneously. And you got to remember, pre-cell phone, pre-internet. Internet was just coming around, but nothing to speak of, especially up there. Nobody had a device in their hand, right? I'm just like standing outside of the village, like waiting. He goes in, he's talking to the elders and like, asking permission, and guys are coming down in canes. They're blind. And, just what you can imagine, like you can't make this stuff up, coming in and, eating a meal and having the whole village just watch me eat the meal, just like standing around me. And just the honor, the innocence, the beauty of the whole thing. 15 kids follow me around into the mountains. I'm trying to go to the bathroom. There's no bathroom. And I'm like, okay, stay here. I'll be right back. No, they're just following me, pointing at me, laughing. Talk about humility, so that was really transformative. That was just one experience, then just the energy of it, the physicality of it, walking 18 miles a day at least, meeting so many interesting people along the way. Second one I did more recently was the Stubai High Trail in Austrian Alps. And that was a cool experience, a bit easier than the Himalayas, but still kind of tough. What was nice about it is that you would hike for a day or a half a day and then wind up at these inns. And the inns are rustic in the sleeping arrangement. Everybody's sleeping in like next to each other in the sleeping bags or in a room full of 10 people. And you hang your wet boots out on this like boot wall. But what wasn't rustic, what was more fancy about it is that you get served this really hot meal. And, there's like a family that usually owns the inn, or like a group of families, and everybody's dressed in like Austrian garb, sometimes the lederhosen and everything. It's really like sweet. You can grab a beer or like something, kind of nice. And then you would go on to the next day of hiking and then stay at an inn. And just, the Alps are just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. It does something to the mind when you're in nature for that long and you're pushing your body like that every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. Amazing.
Thanks for asking. I love talking about that stuff.
As a writer, there is something that inspires you. And so when we're talking about your upcoming book, The Journey Within, what was it that triggered these thoughts? Was there something that inspired you? Was there one thought? Was it many thoughts? What was it that really initiated the thoughts of this book that's going to be coming out? And tell us when it's going to come out.
Thank you. I feel grateful that you're talking about the book, Russ. It's a vulnerable moment for me. I have to say, like right now, I'm even feeling it in this moment. And the reason is because I know it's going to come out. I know I'm writing this thing, but I don't exactly know completely what the purpose is yet.
Yeah.
I have to be fair about it. I have hints, but it's such an amalgamation of everything. Like I feel a bit self-centered because it's a lot about me and my travels and my journey. So I'm thinking like, why am I writing a book about me? Like, let somebody else write that. I did something better with their lives than I did. But at the same time, it has to be told, right? Because there's the early life difficulties there. There's the coming through that. I think that's got to be hopefully helpful to somebody.
Yes.
I just love talking about the travel and like, again, back to pre-internet, digital phones and everything. I had to take all these pictures, all these handwritten journals, I used to carry around a box of photos thinking people were going to want to, when I came home, they're going to want to see, you want to see all those things. You go to the party, they look through a few photos and they're just standing around, talking to other people. But so how do I get all this stuff out? Like share, this stuff. So there's that, there's the travel, there's my personal story. And then there's embedded every so often little bits of psychology and well-being stuff, the things we're talking about. How do you, right here in my life, I was 20 something. This is where I learned how to harness my thoughts, harness the mind. Or right here in life was where I learned that people weren't interested in my intellect or what I had to say about psychology. They were just interested in my presence, my being, my ability to hold space for them. Right? Oh, that's an insight. Out of like what's going to make me a good therapist. It's not going to be all those studies and everything. And the studies are important, but that's not really. It's like, can you be with somebody? Can you create space? So to answer your question, as I'm talking it through out loud, it's a book about my travel experiences. And I say that on the level of literalness, like Africa, Asia, Laos, Thailand, but it's also the travel and the journey that I've done within, where you go from, your early childhood to your developmental years to starting your career, love relationships, all of those things. And then, a bit of psychology, yoga philosophy, faith. Faith is in there, my faith journey, which is very important to me too. And the vulnerable part is that it's very revealing about me. And, when you're a therapist and you have that kind of role, it's a little tricky with the self-disclosure, as I'm sure you might imagine. It's not like I'm hiding anything necessarily, but it's not about you in the room. It's not. That's what parses out regular old relationships from a therapy relationship. That my duty and my focus is on the client. So when you start to bring stuff about yourself, it can kind of be interesting, right, to know a little bit about it, but it's also a double-edged sword. So that's what all that's about. I can't believe I just said that live.
Wow. Do you have a target time? Do you have like next year or 2020?
2023 is the target time. The writing of it is mostly done.
Okay.
Anyone who's written a book, I'm sure now comes the hard part for me. Some people, the writing part is hard. That part was easy. It's like, do I get it? Is it self-published? Do I try to get a publisher? The book jacket, the ISBN number, all these little details I am really terrible at. But I'm hoping, honestly, by the end of 2026.
Okay. Awesome.
Thanks for asking.
Absolutely, man.
Accountable.
Amazing. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. It's been a good process just to write it, even if it doesn't get out there. Sure. It's really, really wonderful to get all the journals on paper, get all the stories on paper. Like, wow, did that really happen? It must have. I wrote it down.
I could see that being the case, though. I could totally see that being the case. Like, I'm not a writer. Russ is a writer, but I could totally see you just reminisce in the moment as you write and just kind of relate back to all those moments and what they meant to you. Like, I could just see that happening.
It's great. And what's cool is all these characters in this story, right? That's a real story. And I'm a super extrovert, so I love people and I love connecting with people. So I'll be reading a story about people I met on the road and everything, and then I'll just spontaneously, this is how I am, get on Facebook or find them. Maybe I'm connected to them already because I have their address, and just send them pictures or send them a little blurb from my journal. Remember we did this, or you didn't know I felt this way about you, did you? Here's what I was writing about you in my 20s. This is so fun, and people are usually always very receptive, and they like them back too.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
It's fun.
Dan, you're kind of in a multitude of different worlds, from podcasting, writing, adventuring. Is there anything that fuels them all together pretty much? Is there any portion that they kind of bleed into each other? The world of podcasting, writing, that they fuel each other, like in your work in general? Anything where it comes together, like podcasting, the travel?
That's good. gonna need a minute to think about that. Let me. I th- I guess there's two levels, right? So one level, I think, that is the biggest umbrella of all, has to do with back to what I was talking about, faith. So I'm a believer. God is very important to me. I think that is the apex of all that's happening in any part of my world that's good. So, if we say that podcasting and health and wellness and psychotherapy and my own journey is good, if we can judge it, it starts there. On a more earthly plane, on a smaller plane, I think the tying, the knot that ties all those things together has a little bit to do with that. I've been blessed, again with extroversion, right? So I'm interested in and I'm bold about being with people. And a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, it's not like I got a podcast about how to build a car or something, where it could be like just about not just, it's an incredible thing to build a car, but like about parts or explaining how to do something. Most of everything I do is involved in relationship and people, even travel. So the extroversion helps. The interest and curiosity about life and people is another piece. And I think just the brand of the helping profession, so many ways to help, but I've seemed to have gravitated toward that in my personal and professional life, coaching, public speaking. It's usually about some health, wellness, motivation, psychotherapy. They're all under the helping umbrella.
Sure. Got it.
That's awesome.
That's awesome, man.
There was when I was when I was in Southern California, I had this moment, and I captured this moment in a photo. And then this photo was the setup of what was to come, which was the next moment of meeting this family and this mother that inspired me to write the book Imagine If. And that moment in that time, thank you. In that moment, in that time, that was a time of inspiration. Okay. And I know you just shared about Nepal and that. I want you to take us to a moment, not necessarily a moment of inspiration to write a book, but what was a moment that really, and you look back in your travels, all the countries that you've done, all of the different, hikes, altitudes, villages, everything you've seen, what is something that inspired you that sticks with you? And it could be on a daily basis, could be on a weekly, or just whenever you think about it, that really has inspired you to live the life that the way that you live it.
That's good. One moment. So many moments.
Breath work, Dan. Breath work.
Yes, breath work. I'm on the spot. No, it's okay. I want to take the question seriously.
Yeah.
It's interesting. What's coming to me, Russ, are two things. And it's going to sound. I'm feeling pulled to find a moment where it was another person, that I was seeing that sort of had an impact on me, which there's been plenty of that. But the moment that's coming to mind is actually sort of like an in-between moment that happened to me, where a professor in college, I felt very, very sort of like misplaced at Franklin and Marshall College. It was this very, like liberal arts school, all these smart people coming from prep schools and things like that. I felt like I got in because I was a wrestler, and like, do I really belong there? Am I smart enough to even be here? And I remember my psychobiology professor said something like, I was like, yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do with psychology. Like maybe I'll get a job and I don't know about grad school. And she just turned to me, she goes, Dan, you're competent. The world needs competent people. Go for it. And it shifted everything, because she was saying it. incredible respect for her, Karen Cianci. If you're out there listening, you had an impact. And I think what it did, that was an inspiration to me to realize it's not this big, like, gigantic wave you have to surf perfectly, to like make an impact in the world. It's really, it's like you may be there already. Now, the way this translates to other people is that in my travels and in my journeys, I recognize the power of just being present with somebody, listening to their story, making space for where they are, how they are, whoever that might be. It might have been a homeless person or a person who was suffering. It might have been a single mom, in Thailand, struggling to make ends meet and having a conversation with her on a beach. This could be all of these moments, but it's just like opening your focus to an opportunity rather than shutting down or moving into judgment, which breeds fear, which breeds constriction, which breeds separation, right? So, and every time and time again, when I allow myself to open, to have an opportunity, something good comes out of that, something useful, something inspiring, sometimes hard, sometimes difficult to hear, but there's a connection, there's a human connection. So yeah, I hope that was okay. I did
absolutely.
Winding
absolutely.
Great.
No, I love what your teacher told you. Competent, right?
Basically, you're enough. You're enough.
You are.
So keep going. And I was like, what? Yeah. I was so used to like, no, the bar's got to be higher, and no, I'm not there yet. Struggling, blood and sweat.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Dan, we're probably going to wrap it up with this one, but just real quick, we ask every guest at the end of the show usually about our quote that we use to close the show out and what it means to you. So we usually close the show out with this quote saying, wellness is not about perfection, but about progress. What does that quote mean to you?
Oh, so much. That's a great quote. Progress, not perfection. Perfection is the enemy of the good. You probably heard that. And the reason being is because there really is no perfection. It's a construct of the mind that keeps you limited, keeps you constricted, keeps you in the sea of a feeling like you're always in failure. Whereas when you look at progress, you can always find some way to make progress, even in small incremental steps. I have a joke in my therapy room, which I say, there's only one problem with perfectionism. Only one problem is that nobody's really doing it good enough. That's something to keep in mind too.
I like that a lot.
That's good. Dan's going to use that. I guarantee it.
I'm definitely going to use that.
Good.
Guys, thank you so much for listening today. Dan Guerra, thank you so much for being with us. This was an incredible episode, inspirational, motivational. Thank you again. Couldn't thank you enough.
I can't thank you
guys.
Pick
up his book, From Stress to Centered, on Amazon. Pick it up.
And pick up Imagine If.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, buddy.
It was a real pleasure being with the both of you. Thank you for your
thank you so much.
Questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much again for being with us this morning.
It was a great time, man. Thank you so much, Dan. Appreciate you.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.